an hour or even less, you can have a functional handgun. We can no longer tolerate the fiction that these components should not be defined as regulated firearms. This bill will ban the sale, receipt, transfer of unfinished frames or receivers that are not serialized by the manufacturer. The ban will go into effect on June 1, 2022. As of January 1 of 2023, the possession of unserialized firearms will be illegal. Those who own already privately made firearms will have the option to sell those weapons to a licensed dealer before that time, or to have the weapon properly imprinted with a serial number by a federally licensed firearms dealer. Violation of the law, the bill as we propose it, would be a misdemeanor subject to 3 years of imprisonment and a fine of up to $10,000. I want to specifically thank Senator Lee, Delegate Lopez, Delegate Ampre for their efforts on this issues. And I want to thank the Biden administration for proposing the new regulations that would update the federal definition of firearm to close this loophole. So now we will hear from additional speakers. Do we have Mayor Scott on the line at this point?
Yes, sir, Mr. Attorney
Fire
General,
away,
I am
Mr.
here.
Mayor. My pleasure to
Thank you.
introduce great mayor of the great city of Baltimore, Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you for your leadership and really for the opportunity to be here on such an important occasion to discuss this issue that of ghost guns. That's an issue and continue to be a huge challenge for Baltimore City and across Maryland and really across this country. And I really want us to understand this and think about the numbers. Over 300 ghost guns were seized by the Baltimore City Police Department in 2021. That represents nearly 15% of all the guns that we seize. And over the past 3 years, the number of ghost guns we are seeing on our streets has been growing exponentially. BPD seized 30 ghost guns in 2019, 128 in 2020, and 324 to be exact, in 2021. And earlier last summer, we partnered with HSI to take down a firearms trafficker in Baltimore who had the jigs and drills and press to create at least 40 unserialized firearms. Takedowns are not enough to effectively address this issue. Simply put, we need a ban. And that is going to be a part of continuing this spirit of close coordination with our state and federal partners to improve public safety outcomes like those that are outlined in my comprehensive violence plan that we announced last July. And Mr. Attorney General, is a part for me a great opportunity to work with the General Assembly and yourself to aggressively pursue legislative solutions to serious and real problems that we're seeing on our streets. And I'm grateful to you, grateful to Senator Lee, Delegate Lopez, Delegate Clippinger, and everybody who shares this commitment to banning ghost guns. This bill shows that our state and our city that we are committed to getting ahead of this growing concerning trend and proactively working to limit the proliferation of these untraceable ghost guns on our streets. This legislation shows that we can act while we await further federal government action. And regional program problems and statewide problems require statewide and regional solutions. And we know that the majority of weapons used in my city come from outside the city. So we have to track and crack down on this gun trade and do it together. These are the kind of efforts that we're undertaking here in the city with our partnership with Everytown for Gun Safety to go after these gun traffickers with our one of its kind gun data portal. But we know that we have so much more work to do. Firearms that do not have serial numbers or registration have no place in Baltimore or anywhere in our state. This really, to me, is common sense legislation that demonstrates a commitment to keeping our residents safe and holding those who use these legal guns in the commission of a crime accountable without penalizing those who are hobbyists or legal gun owners. This is not about attacking legal gun owners. This is about us being responsible as a state to make sure that if folks are going to be buying weapons, that they do it in a responsible and illegal way. And another important piece of the puzzle in our approach is to build a better and safer city for all. And we cannot do that if we are not working to deal with this issue. I'm proud to work with you, Mr. Attorney General, and everywhere else, our law enforcement partners around the state to advocate on behalf of this legislation, and look forward to working with you each and every day. And want to say, send a message to those who are doing this criminal behavior and using ghost guns in our city. We are coming from you. We are going to hold you accountable. If you're buying and shipping in these parts, we're going to hold you accountable. We are no longer going to tolerate folks who think it's okay to build these and put these in the hands of children, to put these in the hands of people that they know are going to use it against our citizens. So together, I want to thank you, and thank everyone for being here, and look forward for fighting for this piece of legislation with every bone and breath in my body.
Thanks a million, Mr. Mayor. We really appreciate your good work. Uh, Next, we're going to hear from Senator Susan Lee. She and Delegate Lopez were the sponsors of last year's legislation. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Attorney General Brian Frosh, and thank you for being our sterling champion of gun safety, not only in Maryland, but nationwide. Your exemplary leadership and work have made a real difference. And so we thank you for making this bill one of your top priorities this year. And thank you, Mayor Scott. You pretty much summed it up, and we're here to protect Marylanders. But I'd like to thank all the other partners too for joining with the Attorney General and Delegate Lopez and I in getting this bill finally passed this year, because we have always introduced this a number of years and has not been able to get it out. But we we um, we are so happy that we're all working together finally on this, because ghost guns have been the weapons of choice for many violent criminals, gangs, domestic abusers, and even terrorists, including white supremacist groups and criminal populations. It's with great ease it is to purchase PMF online and then assemble them into a gun. It's broken my heart to see the numbers of violent gun homicides and injuries surge, not only in Maryland, but throughout the country. And these statistics, they represent real everyday people and even children whose lives were cut short and whose families have been devastated and shattered. As Commissioner Michael Harrison will tell you, he will tell you about how it has affected his area, as well as the Montgomery County and Prince George's County officials that are here today, um, our state's attorneys in both counties. Uh, you know, I just have to say, in early 2020, members of the base, a white supremacist group, they were arrested in Maryland. They had in their possession some homemade assault rifles, those being ghost guns. So this has been an alarming trend. And most alarmingly, there's also been the possession of ghost guns by minors, evidenced by Montgomery County Police recently finding a fleeing 15-year-old suspect with a loaded ghost gun at Northwest High School. And for years, Delegate Lopez and I have introduced our bill, and including a bill that was introduced by our JPR chairman, Senator Will Smith. And these ghost guns, they have undermined, absurded, and threatened to make ineffective the hard-fought good gun safety laws that we passed in Maryland over the years, particularly those laws requiring background checks. Our bill, as the mayor said, is common sense. It's a no brainer legislation that just requires those firearms to have a serial number on them. And this bill will prevent countless gun tragedies. It will not only keep guns out of the hands of violent criminals, but also, unfortunately, our children, and also help our law enforcement solve those crimes and help our state's attorneys prosecute those crimes and keep us, our families, and our communities safe. While we commend the Biden administration, namely through ATF, for finally taking action to develop those regulations that would make clear that those kits are firearms under federal law. Attorney General Frosh, myself, and Delegate Lopez are now taking immediate action with the help of our partners here, because as you all know, the federal regulatory process takes a lot of time to finalize any kind of regulations. So now that the federal government is taking action, it's imperative that we regulate this new category of firearm so we can protect Marylanders now from the real and serious harm and damage and violence that ghost guns can actually inflict on us. And again, my heartfelt thanks to to everyone who is here today on this press conference for partnering with us, particularly shout out to my state's attorney, John McCarthy, for helping us propel this legislation through the legislature today, and our attorney general. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Now we'll hear from Delegate Lesley Lopez, who, as Senator Lee and I both mentioned, has been a leader on this issue in the House of Delegates. Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Attorney General. My name is Delegate Lesley Lopez, and I represent District 39 in the Maryland General Assembly. And I know that we have so many speakers on the call today, so I'll make my remarks brief. I think the number of speakers that we have today is really a testimony to the amount of people who are engaged on this issue across the state and how important it is to get this bill passed this year. People have been working largely behind the scenes for years, sharing information, sharing data about what they've been seeing. And so the call today is really a celebration of years and years in work, and really a great announcement about how our state is going to be safer in the upcoming years. Like I said, we've been working on this bill for a while, but this year the bill is in a different posture, and it's probably in the best posture it's ever been. It's different because, number one, it's an outright ban. In previous years, we've had to walk a very technical tightrope between federal law and state law and tried to come up with a solution that was the best fit for Maryland. But now there's a new urgency around how these firearms are being used. There's new changes in the regulatory environment. And so this year we can present a bill, and it's a bill that's a ban. And it's really in a great posture that reflects this changing environment. As the Attorney General mentioned, there's a new ATF rule that will likely be in place within the next 6 months. It's going to change the definition of what actually is a firearm. And so that was one of the factors that changed the way that this bill was introduced this year. It's also important to know that this bill goes after the supply chain of people who are going to be making these firearms to sell to prohibited people, in addition to going after the criminals who are using these types of firearms for their criminal activity. So it's a twofold approach in that way. Hopefully we get these guns taken off the street before they're used in any type of criminal activity. The other thing that's really important to know about this bill is that it comes up with a clear pathway for hobbyists who have been making these firearms for generations. It shows them clear steps about what they can do to make sure that they're not breaking the law. And it does everything it can to make an honorable attempt to protect legal and lawful gun owners. You're going to hear a lot of folks talk about ghost guns today. And I just want to give a few kind of brief vocab glossary terms to explain what we're talking about, because even though it's a ban, it is still a very technical bill. A ghost gun is any type of gun that is made outside of the traditional supply chain. And because it's made in this way, privately, a privately made firearm, it doesn't have a serial number. So there's no way to trace ownership and how that gun was sold and transferred and those types of things. Law enforcement is very keen on using the word polymer 80. A polymer 80 is a certain type of manufacturer of these gun parts, but polymer 80 is a good kind of loose term because these gun parts are made from polymer and they are 80% finished when you buy them. And I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is a polymer 80 for an AR-15, and I purchased this online with just a shipping address and billing address that were the same. It didn't ask for my legal name. The website didn't ask if I was a prohibited person in any way. It didn't ask for a statement to confirm that. It just asked for my credit card information and where to ship it. Under federal law, this isn't anything, but if these 3 holes were drilled in here, if you can see those perforations, this would be an assault rifle. Under federal law and state law, this would be an AR-15, and it wouldn't be something I could purchase in this state or any state where there's an assault rifle ban. And so obviously this is a huge loophole where prohibited people are getting access to these types of firearms. You're going to hear law enforcement detail data and statistics that really show how startling these trends are and why we have the urgency that we do to work in this broad coalition to get this bill passed. I'd just like to offer, in my community in District 39, we've certainly had our a ghost gun tragedy with the passing of Axel Trejo. He's a 21-year-old man who those who are journalists might have covered that story. He was playing basketball with his 14-year-old brother and his 9-year-old brother at the Plumgar Rec Center. And a 15-year-old young man who allegedly had one of these ghost guns shot him, killed him in front of his siblings. And it's a tragedy anytime that there's a loss of life, but it's also a tragedy when you have a shooter that's so young and given the circumstances of his family being there. It's an issue that impacts my community, but it's also an issue just right in my backyard, because I used to live right against Plumgar Rec Center. And in the evenings and when the weather was nice, you could open up the windows and hear those kids play basketball in the courts below our house. And so it is a very personal thing for me, not only as a survivor of gun violence myself, but as someone who represents a community that's had this type of tragedy. So I'm proud to be the House sponsor and the House leader for this bill. And I am so proud to be a part of this coalition that's gaining momentum.
Thank you so much, Delegate Lopez. Next, we'll hear, I believe we have Senate Judicial Proceedings Chair Will Smith with us. I understand he may not want to say much, but Mr. Chairman, would you at least say hello and wave to the crowd?
Mr. Attorney General, Mr. Smith is not here yet.
Got it. Okay, then let's move to the House Judiciary Chair. Luke Klippinger, he's been a great champion of gun safety and a proponent of this legislation. Mr. Chairman, would you say a few words?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm very pleased to see the broad coalition of supporters who are coming out to support this important legislation. We're seeing ghost guns, not just in the state of Maryland, but across the country, of course, and we're seeing the urgent need to regulate these weapons. In my day job, I'm speaking not as a representative of the Anne Arundel County State's Attorney's Office, but in my day job, I do see polymer 80s that have been used and involved in crimes, and they've become a greater challenge for law enforcement all the way across the state. When a person can self-assemble a firearm and avoid a background check and create a weapon without a serial number, we have to ask ourselves whether that truly aligns with our values and what we want to do as it relates to public safety. Of course, this issue hits very close to home in Baltimore City, where we've seen a great increase in the number of the polymer 80s and other ghost guns that have been recovered by the Baltimore Police Department. We've seen that increase in numbers steadily over the last several years, and I'm very happy to be here today with Mayor Scott and Commissioner Harrison, who are leading on this very, very important issues. In previous sessions, the House and Senate have passed reasonable and common sense regulations for firearms, including background checks for rifles and shotguns. Our committee here in the House will continue to our work on this area, and we'll look at the best approach to protect Marylanders from ghost guns as part of a larger and longer conversation about keeping our communities and our families safe from violent crime. So again, I want to thank the Attorney General for organizing this event and for leading on this issue. With no offense to Senator Lee, it's my job to really raise up the hard work that Delegate Lesley Lopez has done on this issues in her 4 years as a member of the Judiciary Committee and as a member of the House of Delegates. She has truly taken this on and done an outstanding job putting together what I believe will be a very, very good bill. And she's a big part of the reason, both Senator Lee and Delegate Lopez, a big part of the reason why we're where we are today. So thank you all very much. Look forward to working on this legislation and getting it out of the House Judiciary Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Next, we're going to hear from the Commissioner of Police of the City of Baltimore, Michael Harrison. So pleased to have you with us and thankful for the great job that you're doing. Mr. Commissioner, take it away.
Thank you so much. I want to give you a special thank you to Attorney General Frosh. Thank you to Senator Lee and Delegate Lopez, Chairman Clippinger, and to my Mayor Scott for your tremendous leadership on this issue. I'm extremely proud to stand virtually with all of you today to urge the adoption of these bills that will reduce the devastating impact of violence that has been experienced by Baltimore City residents. While we're working every day to break the cycle of gun violence with evidence-based solutions and community policing initiatives, we face a new threat to public safety from unserialized firearms known as ghost guns. Over the last few years, Baltimore has seen a frightening increase in the number of ghost guns that have been seized in our city. 2018, we seized only 12 ghost guns, but in 2021, we seized 345. That's a 2,775% increase. And of those 2021 seizures, Baltimore police linked 32 ghost guns to a shooting or homicide, and then in 2021, 9 homicide victims actually had a privately made firearm on their possession at the time they were murdered, which is an 800% increase from 2020, when I only had 1 homicide victim had a ghost gun in their possession. In addition, in 2021, 52 of those privately made firearms were linked to other incidents through ballistics, and then 69 of those ghost guns were directly linked to an act of violence. I could spend hours telling you stories about how these ghost guns have hurt our community and made our streets unsafe. For instance, last year, a ghost gun was used in a disturbing incident in which an individual shot someone at the harbor and then attempted to shoot at our officers as we were attempting to apprehend him. You've heard my mayor talk about the trafficking network that were purchasing and manufacturing and then selling these ghost guns on the streets. The majority of the ghost guns that have been seized by the Baltimore Police Department over the years were actually in possession of individuals who were prohibited from purchasing a weapon, such as convicted felons and those under the age of 21. In fact, nearly 1/4 of all of the ghost guns recovered in Baltimore by our police in 21 were from individuals who were not old enough to obtain a firearm, including 3 who were only 15 years old or younger, kids. Unfortunately, this dangerous trend has continued into the current calendar year with no signs of letting up. So far in this year, we've recovered 31 privately made firearms, when in this same frame time last year, we had only received 12. That means we're far outpacing last year, and at this rate, we're on pace to seize over 700 ghost guns. Due to the lack of regulation, ghost guns have quickly become a weapon of choice for traffickers, criminals, and unless action is taken, I only expect this problem to get worse. Therefore, I implore the legislature to adopt these bills. All of our communities need and deserve these protections. So thank you so much for allowing me to say a few words today.
Mr. Commissioner, thanks so much for being with us. And we're now going to turn to one of your partners, the police chief of Prince George's County. And Chief, we thank you, Mr. Malik Aziz, for being with us. And we also want to thank your county executive, Angela Alsha Brooks, for the great work that she's been doing. Chief Aziz, would you like to say a few words? Chief, I think you're on screen, and I think you're unmuted, so go right ahead. Chief Aziz, you can go ahead and speak. Oh, you seem to be muted, I guess.
I sent him a text message, Mr. Attorney General.
There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. That was you, Commissioner Harrison.
Yes, I sent him a text message.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that he's toggling back and forth between muting and unmuting, but even when he unmutes, it's not picking him up. Can you hear us?
You just point.
You can't hear us, Chief. Well,
Excuse me, Chief Aziz, could you go down on the bottom right of your screen and go on your speaker icon down there and make sure that you have the right audio setting selected?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. We got you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Finally. I'm so sorry that I'm having technical difficulties. So I make my apologies if I stepped on anyone due to tech advising me to turn on my mic, unmute my mic. Good afternoon to AG Frosh and distinguished Senator Lee, Delegates Lopez, Clippinger, and Mayor Scott, and of course my friend and colleague, Commissioner Harrison. I want to thank you all for the hard work you're doing to stop gun violence, and especially violence created among ghost guns. About 6 years ago, I watched a TV docuseries that highlighted the making of ghost guns, and it was narrated by Michael Williams, the late actor Michael Williams. Before then, I'd only heard sparingly about fabricated weapons that were untraceable by serial numbers in my previous law enforcement experience. Since that time, ghost guns and the market and such appetite for such weapons have grown exponentially. And since my arrival as chief in Prince George's County, we have experienced this increase in violence associated with such weapons. In fact, ghost guns in Prince George's County in 2016, we logged only one. In 2017, we logged 4. In 2018, we logged 17. In 2019, 27. 2020, 164. In 2021, 264 ghost guns were seized by Prince George's County Police Department. And this year alone, in 2022, we've already obtained 10 ghost guns this year alone. Since 2019, we've identified at least 13 homicides, at least 10 robberies, and over 20 aggravated assaults with ghost guns. Many of these individuals are young people, many in their teens, obtaining weapons such as ghost guns and utilizing them or possessing them on the streets of Prince George's County. Currently, there's no distinction in the state of Maryland with regard to charging documents between a ghost gun and a regular gun. The impact of these weapons is well known throughout our agency and our peer agencies involved, and it's rapidly becoming a weapon to possess among gang members and drug dealers, or it's just a weapon to have. In fact, we looked at some of our arrests that has occurred over the past year, and across jurisdictional lines, we've had our sister agencies, our fellow agencies, they have logged into NIBIN casings that were found in shootings. And at least 3 times the same weapon was utilized until we made an arrest of a person who was utilizing a ghost gun. And when we arrested him, of course, we found the Polymer 80 ghost gun. In the past few weeks, Prince George's County Police, we've arrested 4 individuals for drug possession, and in their possession was a Polymer 80 ghost gun. We had another arrest in the stolen vehicle. The arrestee had in his possession a Polymer 80 ghost gun. We ran a search warrant, and inside the location was a Polymer 80 ghost gun. The impact of these weapons are being felt, not just countywide, but regionally, but nationwide. One of the main factors of ghost guns impacting crime is that the ghost gun parts and kits are ordered online without a criminal history check. This gives individuals who've been convicted of a crime or prohibited from possession of firearm and alternate means of acquiring firearms. Technically, possession of the ghost gun kit is not even a crime unless the kits are fully converted into a fully functional firearm. Anyone with rudimentary skills in a drill press can produce dozens of these ghost guns in a single day and sell them for several $100s each on the streets. Ghost guns, they don't have these serial numbers, as we heard, untraceable, adding to the large volume of gun cases that are currently being investigated and processed, adding further strain to our criminal justice system. An integral part of law enforcement efforts to reduce firearms and related violence associated with the tracing of firearms. Tracing has allowed law enforcement officers to identify those responsible for trafficking firearms in the state of Maryland and outside this state. The problem of ghost guns are fast becoming a problem for large metropolitan cities and counties, as I hear from my colleagues when we visit and talk at least four times a year. Our vibrant firearms examination unit, recognized for their hard work dedication to duty along the Eastern Shores tracked these weapons many years ago, and you heard those numbers grow year after year. So your Prince George's County Police Department, we support legislation and enforcement and federal, state, or local laws that seek to make the places where we live, where we work, where we shop, entertain, and our children are playing, to make that place better and safer. Thank you.
Chief Aziz, thank you very much for your remarks, and thank you for the great work that you're doing as well. Next, we're going to hear from the state's attorney for Montgomery County, John McCarthy.
Thank you, Brian. It's an honor to join the Attorney General, Senator Susan Lee, my friend, and Delegate Lopez from Montgomery County, and all the allies that we have from around the state of Maryland on this very important issue. Bottom line is everywhere. Ghost guns are a threat to our nation state and our counties and cities. Some major cities have recorded that nearly 50% of their homicides are committed now with ghost guns. Unless we address intelligently ghost guns, all the prior legislation that we've passed to regulate guns in our community really becomes meaningless. Look, I'm particularly honored to be here with the Attorney General. You know, the most comprehensive gun safety laws ever passed in the state of Maryland really were the bills that Brian, you worked on along with Jamie Raskin in 2013. This is part of that continuing legacy of making Marylanders safe, and I want to thank the Attorney General for doing that and the other sponsors in this bill. Effectively banning ghost guns is the only real way to do this. I think that's what Delegate Lopez was pointing out. Look, the bottom line is the right approach is to say these are firearms. They must be serialized, and background checks, along with other things, have to accompany the distribution of these weapons. Many have talked about the increase in their individual communities of ghost guns. Montgomery County is no exception. We had very small numbers in 2019. In 2021, our numbers increased fivefold in 2 years. We're moving in the same direction everybody else is. We've also seen ghost guns involved in homicides, involving in one instance very young people, which I want to transition to two final points. Is ghost guns are beginning to creep into our schools. In my own county, we seized 2 from a county school this week. We have seized 5 ghost guns from 3 different schools. What's the bottom line? Kids can buy them, kids can build them, kids can distribute them, and kids can use them. And that's a pattern we're seeing not only in my county, but across the state. We also have to be mindful that these guns are distributed to people that we've made the intelligent decision should be prohibited persons. We had a manufacturer was operating in a Silver Spring section of my county that was building AR-7s and handguns and distributing them throughout that community to individuals that we'd already made a community decision about should not be permitted to legally own firearms. If we're going to have any integrity in our gun safety laws and reduce the level of violence in our community, this bill is a no-brainer. I mean, many people have already said this. One of the great honors of being here today is that we're really coming together as a huge coalition, and that's been said over and over again. And this is something that has to happen to make all of Maryland safer. But thank you to all of my partners on this bill. Thank you to Senator Lee and Delegate Lopez, and again, General Frosh. Thank you.
John, thanks so much for your, as always, excellent remarks. Nice to see you. Next, we'll hear from the state's attorney for Prince George's County, Aisha Braveboy. Aisha, take it away.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Frosh. It's great to be with you today, as well as Senator Susan Lee, Delegate Lesley Lopez, and Chairman Luke Clippinger. This issue is extremely important here in Prince George's County, as you heard from our law enforcement partners, how big of an increase we have seen over the past few years in the number of ghost guns on our streets. So a lot of the statistics have been stated. A lot of the issues around ghost guns have already been said. So what I wanted to just mention is that our office, as well as I believe all of the state's attorneys across the state, take this issue very seriously. We intend to use the new tools provided under this law to hold individuals accountable for the use of ghost guns in our state and also for the sale of ghost guns to individuals in our state. Ghost guns are no different than guns. They may be packaged differently. They may come to your home differently. The only thing that's different between a ghost gun and a real gun, or not a real gun, but a normal firearm, is that normal firearm, you have to have a background check. You will be prohibited from purchasing it if you are a prohibited person. But with these ghost guns, because they are not considered firearms for the purposes of the public safety article, they are treated differently, but they behave the same. They act the same. They have the same deadly consequences. And so we take these guns very seriously. We look forward to the passage of this bill. And we also look forward to vigorously prosecuting cases involving ghost guns in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State's Attorney Braveboy, and thanks for the great job you're doing in Prince George's County. I know Chairman Smith was trying to get in, but our room is full, so he may be with us.
I'll drop.
Oh, I mean, we do have questions to answer,
Okay.
and I'm not sure what his schedule is like. But if somebody has to leave, it may give him an opportunity. Let me do this. We've received several questions that we should attempt to answer, and I'm going to start with these. There are questions for Mayor Scott and Commissioner Harrison in particular. I think you guys have answered these, but why don't you, if you have anything to add, this is an opportunity. Jessica Albert from WJZ asks, are there a lot of ghost guns used in crime in Baltimore? Do you have any stats on how many crimes are committed using them? And second, how will this legislation especially help Baltimore City? As I say, I think you've addressed those, but if you have anything to add, this is a good time to do it.
Yes, I'll start and then go to the commissioner. We know that they're used in commitments of crimes in Baltimore, and we know by the numbers alone, about the number we're recovering and who we're recovering them from, that this will help us, right? These folks are using these. We didn't go to that gentleman's house in North Baltimore and find these things because he was just having them sit in his house because he wanted to give them to his friends. He knew that these would be used in the commitments of crimes as a part of trafficking weapons and giving them to people for the purpose of committing violence in our city. And this is why this ban will help us. If we do not have these, and we have less of these, and we have more authority to go further with penalizing folks who are building these and using these weapons and just simply not having them at all in our state, it will make our city a safer place.
Thank
you. Commissioner Harrison, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I did mention that in my earlier remarks. In 2021, 32 ghost guns were used in homicides or linked to homicides. And then in that same year, 9 of those victims had a ghost gun on their possession when we arrived to the scene. In 2021, 52 of the ghost guns were used in other incidents that were tied to ballistics, aggravated assaults, and other types of shootings, and armed robberies. And then 69 of those guns were used to other acts of violence, perhaps like in domestic related assaults and aggravated assaults and armed robberies. So yes, we have been tracking how many ghost guns are used in each one of the crime categories in our city.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have some questions from NBC, I guess it's WJZ. The first is the push to ban ghost guns a bipartisan effort? And yes, it is. Nationwide, there are Democrats, Republicans, independents alike who agree that it's necessary to ban ghost guns. They are a serious threat for criminals, from criminals, and they're a danger to the public. I don't know who among the legislators in Maryland will support it or not at this point, but nationwide, I can assure you it is bipartisan. The next question is, have you heard from any pro-Second Amendment groups? And if so, what has been their response? And Delegate Lopez or Senator Lee, would you like to describe the response last session to the bills that you introduced?
Yeah, they unfortunately have opposed our Ghost Guns bill, and also they also opposed a bill that we passed that became law to require background checks on the sale of shotguns and long guns, as well as other gun safety legislation. And of course, we expect that they will probably once again oppose this this bill. But this bill is ready to go. This bill is, as Delegate Lopez says, is in a different posture. It just simply bans ghost guns and requires those guns that are assembled from parts to have a serial number. Why? Because we need to keep our communities safe. We need to help law enforcement solve those crimes because we need to have background checks. We need to be able to trace those guns back to those who may have created those crimes. And we also need to do all that we can to keep our, because we've seen, as both commissioners have told us, the numbers have surged in people having possession of these ghost guns and used in violent crimes, and now, unfortunately, by terrorists. So I think, Delegate Lopez, would you like to add something too?
Sure. No, absolutely, Senator Lee. I think it's really important to make a distinction between the NRA-backed groups who show up to protest things and who provide testimony and your average gun-owning American. There's so much polling that shows that sometimes 80, sometimes 90% of gun owners in this country support universal background checks. And essentially, that's what this is doing, is requiring a background check for a serialized firearm, saying you can't just buy a firearm without a serial number and without going through a background check. The NRA has people come to testify every year on these bills, and there's usually a big, performative element for it, and that's to be expected. It's an issue that people are very passionate about. I would expect this year's bill hearing to be no different than that. But the reality is this is a very serious issue. And we as lawmakers and as members of the law enforcement community have a role in keeping our communities safe. And we are putting together a finely crafted bill that aims to do just that.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Delegate Lopez says. Our laws that we passed in over the years dealing with gun safety, particularly the background checks on firearms and long guns, shotguns, would be meaningless if we don't pass this bill. Because now with ghost guns, because they're not serialized and they're not traceable, you can go around the law and obtain these guns. Anyway, as we have seen, law enforcement and our prosecutors have told us there's been a surge in these types of guns.
Thank you, Delegate Lopez, Senator Lee. The next question from WJZ is, where do things stand at the federal level in terms of getting the ATF to increase regulation of ghost guns? And I think we mentioned that ATF has proposed regulations. I believe, I'm not sure precisely the status of it, but I believe they're still in the comment period, and after the comment period, they can go forward and finalize the regulations, propose the regulations. But there's still ways to go. The last question is there any room and this is from WJZ, is there any room for compromise here? And I think the answer to that is there's always room for compromise. We're always willing to, I don't mean to speak for the legislators here, but we're always willing to seek reasonable ground if there are areas that can achieve the important objectives of this bill, which is, say, stopping crime, stopping the use of unserialized weapons, keeping them out of the hands of felons, keeping them out of the hands of abusers, keeping them out of the hands of children. If we can achieve that, we're willing to work with anybody who has a suggestion to make it work more efficiently or more effectively. I don't know whether any of the legislators wants to comment further, but I think
Yes,
that's
we've
right.
always had we always included all the stakeholders in any bill that we've done dealing with gun safety. And I know Delegate Lopez can back me up on that. We are about protecting Marylanders, and we always include all stakeholders when we go forward, and that's what the hearing process is about. We're hearing about concerns they may have. The opponents express it at a hearing, and then the proponents express their reasons why, and we move forward based on all the testimony that we've heard, and we are trying. We always include all the stakeholders. Delegate Lopez, do you want to add something to that?
Sure, absolutely. You know, any good bill is going to be the result of broad conversations and inclusive conversations where all sides are respected. So the hobbyist community has been a part of this bill from the beginning. There are going to be people who just don't like any type of gun regulation at all, but in previous drafts of the bill, we've worked with hobbyists. A hobbyist actually taught me how to build an AR-15 in preparation for this bill. And so as long as people feel like they're being heard and that there's an open door policy for talking to them, I think that's the best way to craft a bill. I'm hopeful that this will receive bipartisan support because it is a very sensible piece of gun legislation. It really is as nuanced and as specific as possible to go after the people that are involved in the supply chain and have penalties that match people who are using these types of firearms for criminal activity. So I'm confident that this is a reasonable and sensible piece of legislation, and that I have an open door policy. I meet with people who oppose bills all the time, and if there's opposition, my email is public, so hit me up. Happy to talk to you.
All right. Thank you very much. I understand we've been joined by Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee Chair Will Smith. Senator Smith, would you like to say hi and say a few words?
Yes. Hey, how are you? Good afternoon, everyone. And my apologies for being late. I had a few technical difficulties. I know it's been a long conference, so I'll be short. I just want to say thank you to everyone here on the panel today, but in particular, you, Mr. Attorney General, thank you for your work, not only in the General Assembly as chairman of this committee, but then also over the last 8 years. And obviously, I've got to give a shout out to Senator Lee, who has been the champion in the Senate. She has worked on this issue and has been a steadfast champion of public safety and gun safety legislation in her time in the Senate. And obviously, Delegate Lopez, thank you. Prince George's County Chief Aziz, I know the mayor was here, and Commissioner Harrison. Just real quick, a couple of things that have come to mind to me and why this is important for me to support, and I'm proud to support all of your work, is a couple of numbers. And this is slightly dated just from last year, but from 2016 to 2020, over 12,000 of these home build kits were shipped to Maryland, and those sales exceeded over $1 million. And that's just the stuff that we've been able to track. And I know that Commissioner Harrison was here a little bit earlier, and he mentioned the increase, but the Baltimore City Police Department, they observed more than a 300% increase in the number of unserialized firearms. And that was last year's number. So I think they're actually ahead. They're outpacing last year already in this new year, in the first couple days of the new year. And in Silver Spring, where I represent, this is end of the 2001, there were 276 firearms seized in Silver Spring, in my district, District 20. Of those, 24 were unserialized. And so we've seen a large proliferation as the technology has democratized, as access to new companies and as companies have started proliferating. This has become a much more significant problem. So just extremely happy that you all have put in the work. And I'm excited about the prospect of passing this. We are going to pass this year. And I just really thank you all for your support. And I look forward to doing what I can and doing my part over here in the Judicial Proceedings Committee. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and just say thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you to everyone else who's worked so hard over the last few years and months.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think those are fitting comments to end our presentation today. Thank you to every single person who was here, who spoke. This is, as you can tell, a collective effort. and we are expecting and hoping that it will meet success. So stay tuned. We'll be down at the General Assembly and pushing this hard in the very, very near future. Thanks for everybody who participated, and you can take the rest of the day off. Bye, folks.
I'd ask if you're not speaking to please mute your microphone just so that we don't get background noise and we can hear from our presenters. We have some upcoming meetings. You'll see we've been very active in trying to schedule these sessions